In this video, I'm going to be vibe coding with the new GPT 5.2 and talking a little bit about my experience with the model so far after spending over 300 million tokens yesterday. So after the launch for our day 100 stream of vibe coding an app until I make $1 million, I was able to use the model extensively. And after using it for over 5 hours and spending over 300 million tokens, I can now share my opinion on this model. And to be honest, I'm not that impressed. First off, I want to actually show you guys my usage yesterday. So you can see here, December 11th, 2025, GPT 5.2, you can see my input, my output, but my total tokens here, 313 million tokens spent yesterday. I did upgrade to the GPT 5.2 or the ChatGPT Pro plan. So it is I spent $112 worth of tokens yesterday, but since I'm on the Pro plan, I didn't actually spend that amount. I just bought the subscription, right? But here's my usage for yesterday. And the thing about these models, and it's always interesting when we get a model drop because all the AI influencers immediately start hyping it up. They look at the evals, they look at the benchmarks, they look at the leaderboards. And I do think that some of those things matter. But what matters most is actually the opinions of the vibe coding community. And there's a couple things in the BridgeMind community that we've been discussing as this model has, as we've had some time to actually test it out. And I'm going to be going over that here next, but I just want to show you guys here. Yeah, so GPT 5.2 yesterday, 313 million tokens, $112 worth of tokens. But let's get right into it, guys. If you haven't already liked and subscribed, make sure you do so. And we have a Discord community that is one of the fastest growing vibe coding communities on the internet right now. There's a link in the description down below. But with that being said, guys, let's get right into it. So first thing of importance to note is that yesterday on OpenRouter, there were 3 models that OpenAI dropped. So it was GPT 5.2, GPT 5.2 Pro, and then GPT 5.2 Chat. So we're going to get started looking at GPT 5.2. So this is the normal GPT 5.2 model. This is essentially the next upgrade of GPT 5.1 to GPT 5.2. You can see here that the context window is 400,000. Input tokens is $1.75, and then output is $14 per million. But one thing to note is like, hey, if we look at GPT 5.1, I want to kind of emphasize this point is that they didn't decrease the model price. They actually increased it. Context stayed the same, and then the model price actually increased by about, you could say 40%, I think, somewhere around there. So 40%. So with GPT 5.1 to GPT 5.2, it increased the price. The price increased. So that's definitely something of importance to note. They also dropped the GPT 5.2 Pro model. So this is basically like ChatGPT Pro. If you guys are on the Pro subscription, you'll know that this is like their heavy compute, right? And this one is super, super expensive. So this one's $21 per million, which on the input, which isn't that bad. I mean, it is, but if you like compare that to what Opus 4.1 was at earlier in this month, I mean, I think it was what, was it 15 or was it 25? It was somewhere around there. So it was expensive too. So this doesn't alarm me very much. It's more so the output tokens that alarms me. $168 per million on the output. And you would expect that, hey, if you're using this should be an insane model, right? But I actually don't think that that's the case because another thing that I want to show you guys is over on LM Arena, which yes, LM Arena can, it's not super accurate all the time, but it is a good place to look to see, like just on the frontier, I check this about once every day just for updates and whatnot. So you can see right here that Claude Opus 4.5 with that 32K is obviously at the top of the charts right now, and then this GPT 5.2 high is still under Claude Opus 4.5. So, one reason I'm not impressed, but also, it is slightly, it's an advancement for OpenAI, but GPT 5.2 high is at 1486, right? And this is preliminary, but there is a decent amount of votes. I mean, it's 1,600 votes. That's decent. But look down here. Look at how far GPT 5.2 actually is on this leaderboard. So if you look at GPT-5 medium, it's at 1400, and then GPT 5.2 is actually lower than GPT-5. So that's just interesting to me. It seems to me like, hey, they launched that GPT 5.1, which was an upgrade, but in fact, it actually performed worse than GPT-5 on the leaderboards. See, GPT-5 medium, GPT 5.1 medium, still lower. And I think that this is kind of a similar situation. So, just from the leaderboard perspective, that's what I'm seeing. But I also want to show you guys a couple infographics that were sent in the BridgeMind community last night. So let's pull up the BridgeMind Discord. Again, if you haven't joined our Discord community, I highly recommend it. But I want to show you guys, let's go up here. There's a couple messages from a couple highly respected members of our community. So right here, J35, he's the head admin of the BridgeMind community, a highly respected member. And so this is the official Sui Bench verified leaderboard, okay? So this will give you a visual representation of what we're looking at. So here's GPT 5.2 high, and it does 71.8%. It spends a little bit less at $260, but that's a pretty big difference when you're talking about what, 2.6% lower than Opus 4.5, and that does make a difference. And this is Opus 4.5 medium. It barely beats out Sonnet 4.5, which at this point Sonnet 4.5 isn't even that, like, that's kind of starting to become a legacy model. I know a lot of people are still using it because they don't want to use Opus 4.5 because it's a little bit more expensive, but it barely ekes out Sonnet 4.5. And then if you look at GPT 5.2 medium, look at how poorly it performs. So this is important to note. And then another respected member of our community, Super Combo, this is what he actually shared, and I think that what he's getting at is very, very critical, and it's what I noticed when I was vibe coding yesterday and spending over 300 million tokens. So OpenAI, you can see this is their performance, okay? So look at the throughput here, okay? So this is actually how fast the model is. So look at the latency, 5.56 seconds, and then the throughput is 40.25 tokens per second, okay? TPS. So remember that, 5.56 compared in also 40.25. And then I want to show you guys Sonnet or Anthropic Opus 4.5. Here's Anthropic. You can see Anthropic right here. The latency is almost half of that, and then the throughput is more than 100% over the throughput. It's 89.3 tokens per second. So Opus 4.5 is twice the speed of this garbage GPT 5.2 model, and that's what I would kind of refer to it as. Hey, it's okay. I mean, they did better on the leaderboards, but when you're actually vibe coding and when you're in the trenches and when you're grinding as hard as you can every single day, this makes a massive difference. And the thing about these AI models is, in 2026, the next frontier, if you want to succeed with an AI model and you want people to be using it, especially with vibe coding, people that are using literally millions of tokens a day, you need to have speed. Speed is incredibly important. So yeah, so when I see that the throughput is 40.25 seconds, that's an issue. Tokens per second, that's an issue. And, you know, I just don't know how they're really going to be able to compete with that. And what's this one? Is this so this, and then this is Google Gemini 3 Pro as another reference. So in Google AI Studio, this one's at Google Vertex at 69.59 tokens per second. So the fastest is actually Opus 4.5. And I think, like I said, people want to hype up the new model, but I'm just saying this is what you should be looking at is, hey, you look at the benchmarks, you look at the leaderboards, and then you use it, and it's like, okay, let me get this straight. So you may save $100 versus, you know, using this, you know, official Sui Bench. So you're saving a little bit of money using GPT 5.2 high, but you are performing way lower. You know, when you're actually on the frontier and using these models as much as we do as a community, and you're looking at this GPT 5.2, I'm literally like probably not going to be touching this model that much. And if we actually launch this in Warp, so I want to now open up Warp. So if you guys have been watching my workflow, you guys will know that my workflow recently transitioned over from like a terminal-based workflow to actually using Warp. So what I can do with Warp, which is really nice, I'm not sponsored by them, but I just want to show you guys this. So I can literally, this is the terminals, I can go boom, boom, right? And then I can also do vertical. So I'm going to add this here, this here, this here. And this is what I was doing yesterday on stream. So you can now see that I have 6 open, and then I'm just going to do Codex, and I'm actually in the, hold on, let me get back into the base directory here. So I'm going to launch Codex, and then I'm going to CD out, and then launch Codex again, and then I'm going to CD out, and I'm going to launch Codex again, and then I'm going to CD out, and then I'm going to launch Codex again, and then same thing. And really what I'm trying to show you guys is that, hey, when you're working on the edge, when you're on the frontier of these models and of the AI revolution, look at what options you have. So in Codex, you can select models. They do not currently have a Codex model, which does make me question, did they rush this release, right? With their code red or code brown situation, did they rush this release? And it's possible that they did because they launched and they didn't even launch with a Codex model. They only launched with GPT 5.2. So if I select this, you can select between low, medium, high, and extra high. And something that I will say is that yesterday when I was using extra high on stream, I gave it, I think it was 5 prompts. I gave it 5 prompts and I hit my limit. So obviously it is extra high, right? I mean, extra high is extra high. You're going to use a lot. But one thing to note is it's like, hey, I can use Claude with a max plan and never have to worry about my limits. I mean, I'm not kidding. We'll use high on this one. I use the Claude plan, right? And I use, hold on, we have to launch Codex, and I use Opus 4.5 literally all day, and I don't hit my limit. And that may be different for you guys depending on what project that you're working on, but all I'll say is that I did not have an issue with Claude, and when I was using Codex, I basically immediately hit my 5-hour limit, and I had to upgrade to the $200 a month plan. I was using extra high, so obviously that's going to use more tokens, but I'm just saying that's something to note. After 5 prompts, I used my 5-hour limit when I was on extra high, so be careful if you're using that. But this is my workflow. This is how I set things up. This is what I was doing yesterday. And when I'm working, if I have a choice, if I am using the model, I am going to continue to use Opus 4.5. You guys are going to continue to see me do that. And I'm going to show you why. So let's actually try vibe coding with this, right? So I just want to show you guys, like, let's go over to the admin portal. So as you guys know, the project that we've been working on for the past 100 days is ViewCreator, which is essentially a platform where content creators, brands, and social media marketing managers can automate virality. There's a ton of tools like the AI clipping agent where you're able to clip, you're able to create agentic workflows. So these were all the clips that I created yesterday, and this is like Opus clip level. We've done a tremendous job, and I literally can then create these agents. This one's called the Bridgemine clipping agent, and how these agents work is you can literally just create the clips and then you upload them to your content bank, and then it publishes automatically. I basically generate thousands and thousands of views per day just by automating my content creation and content scheduling and posting with these ViewCreator agents. So it's an incredible tool. But one thing that we need to work on as we've gotten further and further into this application is we need to expand the admin portal. So something that we were working on yesterday is just the ability to actually work as an admin and manage users, manage analytics, view data from the application, because as our application gets more users, we need that information now. I didn't prioritize it, but now with over 1,300 users on ViewCreator, I'm going to have to start prioritizing it, right? So let's start to talk to GPT 5.2 and let's give it some tasks. So I'm going to say to this one here, I need you to do an in-depth review of this project here. And then I'm going to do, I'm going to drop in ViewCreator API. And the one issue, like I will say, like when you are comparing Claude Code to Codex, there are so many things where Codex is not even just the model, but also like the ability to do specific things. Like Claude has background tasks, skills, the ability to rewind, and Codex doesn't have these things, okay? And I'm not trying to hate on OpenAI. I'm just saying I used to be a daily user and now I'm not, and there's a reason for that. So yes, when I see all these influencers that are hyping up this stuff, I'm going to start to say, hey, listen, guys, don't listen to the hype. Listen to people that are actually doing it and using it a ton for like actual purposes, right? So I'm going to drop in the project. I now need you to review the AI clipping agent job system, and I want you to create a new route that is specifically for admins. You are going to have to put a roll guard on it as well as an off guard and make it only for admins, and make it so that admins can actually review the data and analytics of the AI clipping agent jobs. Okay, so we're gonna do this, and this is going to, the route should be able to do, there should be several different routes, but you need to review and then build the functionality that is needed for admins to actually be able to manage or review what's being produced by this. Do an in-depth review of the API as well as the admin portal here, and then create a plan for the functionality that needs to be built out. And this is one thing that I will say is that you guys are not going to see this feature be built on this video because this is going to run for 30 minutes. I'm not kidding. This is going to run for 30 minutes. And some people, they have different opinions on it. And I I will say this. I will say that, hey, if you are managing multiple agents, if you are managing a ton of agents at once, sometimes it's actually better to use Codex because of the fact that these agents are going to run for way longer. So that's an extra high agent. You guys are not going to see that built out on this video. The video would be an hour long, right? Because we'd be working and then it's going to create a plan and then we're actually going to have to implement it. But the first thing that you want to do in vibe coding is that you want to build out this plan. So you can see planning admin functionality. This is going to run for a really, really long time. So then this one here, this is a high agent. So what's the next thing that we want to build? Well, we want to build out more admin functionality. So the next thing that I want to do is I just want to build out like an admin dashboard. And I might actually use Medium for this one so that you guys can see it build this. So let's actually drop in the ViewCreator API, and I'm going to also drop in the ViewCreator admin UI, and I'm going to now make my request. I need you to update the index or the home page of the admin UI to actually be a dashboard with analytics about ViewCreator. That means that I want you to go into the API and I want you to create a new module that's related to, or review the existing module that's related to admin functionality and create basically a statistics route that will link up to this dashboard. And statistics should be important things like total user count, the amount of users that have active subscriptions, the amount of revenue that's being generated per month, the amount of usage for each tool per day, important things like that. I don't know what that would be, but I want you to do an in-depth review of the API, and then I want you to plan what that would look like and how that can be implemented into both the API and the UI. So that's my prompt, right? And I'm using Whisperflow to do that. But that's how I'm working with these agents. So we're going to use Medium for that one. So that one may work a little bit faster. This one, you guys, I promise you, you guys are not going to see this one get done. And how long is this video even right now? So we're at 15 minutes, right? So this one now is being implemented. So let's go back and I'm going to show you guys, like, one thing that I saw immediately that was not impressive is that these GPT models have always been bad at UI. They create like that AI slop look, right? And one thing, like, I'll just show you, I mean, I know it's going to be garbage, but I want to show you guys, like, let's just use this high agent. I want you to do a in-depth look here at this project, and I want you to look at the sidebar in the logic for the layout of the application. I need you to build a more robust sidebar with actual pages and routes that would be associated with admin functionality. That would mean different things, like, for example, for the user management or for job management or different pages for the admin portal. You actually need to review the application and identify what those would be. But I need you to actually update the sidebar to create respective links and pages. And I also need you to update the styling of the sidebar now that you're updating it anyway. I need you to improve the styling. So that one, again, and this is the problem. It's like, I don't even think that this is going to get done for you guys on this video because the video would be too long. I think this one's going to run probably for 20 minutes. And I'm not like trying to be like, I'm not trying to hate on it. I'm just saying that there is an issue with these models and I'm going to use them. I mean, I'm going to use them because, hey, now at this point, I've bought in, right? I'm on the pro plan. Sam got me. But I will say it's like, hey, if I was using Claude, just because of the performance, I mean, if we go to Opus, like, let's give it a fair shake, right? Like, if you do, just compare Opus 4.5 with GPT 5.2, right? Let's just do it. GPT 5.2 versus Opus 4.5, right? Let's look at it. So Opus 4.5 has half the context, right? So 200,000 context, $5 per million on the input, and then $25 per million on the output. And then compare that with GPT 5.2. So GPT 5.2 has double the context. It's way cheaper. It's more than half cheaper at least on the input. On the output, not as much. It's like, what is that? Math is hard, but I mean, maybe like 60% of the price, right? So it's a little bit cheaper. But here's one thing that I'll say. Yes, if you're using like usage-based pricing or you're using API keys, yes, Claude Opus, that's going to make a difference, right? I mean, if you're using 300 million tokens in a day, yeah, that's going to rack up, right? But one thing to remember is if I pull up Warp here and I actually pull up, let's just open up a new window and let's launch Claude here. And I want to show you guys my usage. I've been using Opus 4.5 literally all week. And I want to show you guys my usage. So 30% usage this week. My plan resets on December 15th. I'm on a max 20x plan. I'm not going to hit my Claude usage. So for me, even though the price, yes, it is lower, that's redundant because I wasn't going to hit my Claude Opus 4.5 limit anyway. Does that make sense? So for me, I look at it as a vibe coder and I say, okay, well, I'm on the max plan, $200 a month plan for Opus. I'm on the max plan, $200 a month for GPT or ChatGPT Pro, and I'm not going to hit my limits on either of those plans. So if you're spending $200 regardless and you're not hitting your limits on Opus or Claude, and you're not hitting your limits on GPT, why would you even use the GPT model? That's my perspective. That's all I'll share there, at least on the pricing, is that the pricing is a non-issue at this point. And like, if you look at GPT 5.2, it is saying a lot that they increased the price. Like, they increased the price of this model from 125 to 175 and from 10 to 14. And Anthropic is not doing that. If we look up Opus 4.1, look at Opus 4.1, and let's compare Opus 4.1 to Opus 4.5. Look at this. They cut the prices in a third. So for Opus 4.1, it was $15 per million on the input and $75 per million on the output, and they made it a third cheaper. So yes, when you compare Opus 4.5 to ChatGPT 5.2 or GPT 5.2, it is a less expensive model, but you have to take into account the fact that it's slower. You have to take into account the fact that inside of Codex, you are not having a better experience than inside of Claude Code. Claude Code is inherently better. You have to look, again, the speed is incredibly important. And then you just have the web dev leaderboard. Hey, you have GPT 5.2 all the way down here performing worse than GPT 5, which, hey, you have to give them credit. It's still preliminary, but hey, that's a lot of votes. 1,600, that's decent. So I doubt it's going to change like too much, but definitely something to take note of here. And then also, one thing I will say is that if you do go back to like what OpenAI posted, let's just look up GPT 5.2 and look up like some of the benchmarks that they uploaded and posted, right? So they are saying like, hey, look at this, look at the differences, right? And they kind of, it was interesting. Usually when they release the evals, they output, the comparisons between, and I wonder if I can find the X one. I think there's one over on X. Let's see if I can find it here. Let me go to X, OpenAI. Yeah, so here it is. So like, if you look at this, right, very interesting. And I will say, Anthropic does not do this. OpenAI only released the benchmarks that they were winning in. And if you go back to like when Claude, like let's look up Claude Opus 4.5 release, right? And this is just something random, but it is interesting to take note of. So introducing Claude 4.5 Opus, like here, they released, can I find it? Yeah, here, look at this. They released just all the top benchmarks. They didn't care, like for graduate level reasoning, Gemini 3 Pro beat them out, right? But then and it also beat them out in multilingual Q&A, but they still included those sections, right? Like these are kind of like the best benchmarks, right? But I just feel like OpenAI kind of was like, oh, here are the specific cherry-picked benchmarks that we're leading in, and we're only going to show you guys those. Because for Sui Bench Pro, GPT 5.2 did beat Opus 4.5 by 3.6%, but it didn't win out in the normal Sui Pro or Sui Bench. It went out in Sui Bench Pro, but it did not win out in Sui Bench, because if you go up to this article here, is the Sui Bench here? Yeah, so look at this, 80%. And so Sui Bench verified, they got 80%, right? And then for Sui Bench, for Sui Bench verified over here, Opus 4.5 is at 80.9%. So I just find it interesting that they just kind of cherry picked that. So just something to take note of. But let's go back over to Warp. Let's see, hey, is our Codex instances, are they done? So this one didn't even work. This one didn't even submit. I don't know what happened there. So let's resubmit this one. Typical Codex issues. I mean, this is just saying loading at this point. So is that one just not going to work, I guess? So let's just drop our prompt back into a high. Did I just completely lose this? This is great. All right. So also take note, this one, like I said, this one's still running after 9 minutes, and I expect that one to run for maybe 30 minutes. And is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know. I'll find out. And then this one here, this one wasn't even that complicated. And this one's been running for 7 minutes, and this one was on medium. This one, I will say, is still ahead because it's updating code now, but this one is still just like thinking and evaluating. That's what you're going to get with extra high. Okay, this one is now thinking. So Here, that's kind of like my thoughts. I mean, it's just crazy because the model is so slow and Opus 4.5 is so slow that we're not even going to be able to see these agents play out. That's just how the model is, and that's how Codex works. But just as a summary, I'm going to be using Codex a little bit because I do take the benchmarks into account. I don't solely rely on the benchmarks, but I think that benchmarks and leaderboards and how people are ranking the model and voting for it, I think they do matter. So we probably will be using this a little bit more on stream, just to make sure that hey, if they do come out with some crazy model, that we're there for it and we're not like behind. But I will say that Claude Opus 4.5 is still ahead. Kind of gave you just my download in this video. I hope it's helpful for you. If it did help you, make sure you leave a like and comment down below. But yeah, I mean, I've been around long enough to know what models have been a actual advancement forward, right, on the frontier. So yes, GPT, OpenAI, they did improve from GPT 5 to GPT 5.2, but if you actually, take a step back and you look at the frontier, this is not an advancement when you compare it to Opus 4.5. So this is really like a no biggie, right? Like they just released their latest model so that they can get close, right? But it's not something that we're going to look at and be like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing. And the verdict is still out, and that's why it's like, hey, we need to give it a chance. First impressions, I'm not impressed. But we're going to continue to use this just like on stream, because I will say one thing that they did do with this release is at least made GPT models usable again. Okay. Like if we go back over here, I used to be a daily user of Codex. Look at this. So if you go back here, you can see I was literally I used it all of October. I used it every single day up until it looks like November 13th. So I was using GPT-5 Codex. I mean, did I miss a single day? You guys can pause the video and look at it. It doesn't look like it to me like I missed. I guess that October 24th is the only day I missed. But you can see like, hey, I used to spend 277 million in that day, 187 million that day, 162, 335 million. So I used to use these models a ton, and then I completely stopped. I mean, you can see that between November 13th, I only used it a handful of times, and not even that much. I mean, look how many tokens I was using, barely any. So I stopped using GPT models, and I will say this potentially makes GPT models usable again, because before they were unusable. It didn't even make sense to be using GPT models. But now you can look at the frontier, you can say, okay, that does call into question, could you be using them and implementing them in some way, shape, or form? I would say yes, but overall, I'm not impressed. I don't think that this is going to switch to my main model. I'm going to continue to use Opus 4.5. I think that Opus 4.5 is definitely still the leading model. We'll see what develops. We'll see if that opinion changes over the course of the next month as they iterate and tweak a couple things. Also, I think that there's supposed to be like some special Christmas announcement next week from OpenAI, so we'll see what that is. But with that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the future.